welcome to Rocket Lasso Live. It is episode 8 of season 6. I messed up the graphics last week because 2 weeks ago it was episode 6, season 6, and I accidentally said it was going to be episode 6, season 7. So that was very confusing as I tried to set everything up today. How is everyone doing? We got some people on Twitch. We got some people on YouTube. I was running a little bit behind all crazy, but I think I got everything working. So start getting those questions together. If you have a link to Instagram or some video or anything, make sure I can see the artist or the studio who made it. If I can't give credit, we're not going to attempt to figure out how to make some of it. And you can always just type out a question. You can only put links on Twitch. You cannot put links on YouTube, but you can just type them out. I like to type out questions, and we can tackle anything involving Cinema 4D. Wait, do I have the wrong version open? I downloaded the 4.1 version. I thought I'd swear I downloaded the updated version. Let me double check. Maybe I'm just not linked to it. Anyway, get those questions together. We don't have any questions in the chat quite yet. If we don't have any questions, we can't answer them. It looks like it put a separate install or a separate link for the new version. I do have it, so I'm going to make sure to link it in my taskbar now. Let's see, what are some things that are going on over here? In Chicago, there's a meetup tonight, a Chicago Motion Artist Group meetup, which is always fun. Soon, hopefully, we're going to have a Chicago C4D meetup here in the city. And Half Res is supposed to be September 20th, which is coming. It's coming along. So we'll see how that goes. Dan saying, every time the stream starts, my mind goes blank. New nodes. It's no one. I don't know what you mean by people saying new nodes in Cinema or Redshift. I mean, there's the new Tune stuff that EJ tackled when he was a guest on the stream. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure what that's referring to. Pin the tack bar. Cool. Actually, something, well, I don't know, but if everybody in the chat is interested, a thought I had, I forget, it was when they were super new. I didn't see it. Somebody over my shoulder when I was at NAB mentioned it, where somebody was doing some particle stuff where essentially it wasn't real, but it's kind of like behaviors where imagine we could try and build a rig where we're building out a bunch of French fish. Good question. We could go and do that. But anyway, people keep in mind the idea of like we could build a lot of behaviors in the particles using the flocking system and the predator prey system. So it's almost like you can imagine like a Fortnite type thing where you go and you drop a couple a thing flies overhead and it drops a couple particles, and those particles are like running around trying to grab other things. And if they grab something, suddenly they'll turn into a more powerful particle, and those particles will go and start trying to chase other particles around. And if they get near a particle, then they'll start shooting. If they're shooting at the other thing and a bullet hits, then the other one will disappear. And like layering behaviors in, not as if they're particles, but almost as if they're agents, like video game agents. So people think about that, see if there's anything that jumps out at you there. But otherwise, yeah, we need some questions. But yeah, French is asking, and I'm going to switch to the computer right away, is asking about revisiting the idea of the proton pack, which I did do. I did a demo of that a long time ago in SIGGRAPH, and I also did a little demo of that when I was a guest on the VFX and Chill live stream / podcast. I'm not sure how they define their show. And now we've got some new connector stuff. Now I did cover some of this stuff a little bit in the What's New video, because you essentially could do some of these techniques in a new way. So let's take a look. Looks like some of my, when I updated my Cinema, it didn't link everything. So you see, I don't have my particle layout, and it doesn't have my, does it have my, it doesn't even have, it's got like none of my stuff. There might be bug fixes though. Anyway, that's a bit of a pain. I'm gonna have to manually link all that stuff up. It's not hard, but it's just a pain. So yeah, so if you think about a proton pack, and what you would usually do is like a sphere, and I did work. I guess it's okay. I did work a little all over the place, but let me jump back here. I'm going to quickly Google something and see if I can actually find the proper thing so I can show you. Um, because back in the day, um, I worked on the Ghostbuster. Oh, wait, it's called Ghostbusters Corp. Um, and they ended up like going in a completely different direction. I just kind of helped out with it, but somebody had posted. No. Oh, dang it. It's going to be hard to find this. My buddy who was in charge of it posted it somewhere. But now I can't find it. But anyway, I worked on like an official Ghostbusters thing when they made the 2016 movie, and it was supposed to be like the title for the company that was going to be making a ton of Ghostbusters movies. Um, that didn't happen, but I was hoping to find it. But anyway, I did like all the animation for the Ghostbusters laser wrapping around it and whatnot. Now I can't find it. Oops, wrong button. Sorry about that. So let's just start tinkering around from scratch, and also everybody start getting proper questions together so that we have another one queued up. So anyway, what I kind of want to do is have a tentacle. Like we can think of this as a Ghostbusters proton beam, but you can think of this as like an octopus tentacle, or some sort of robot arm, or like a million different things. So let's start out. Let's make a cylinder. It's possible I'm a little bit rusty on some of these, but let's just see how we can do it. So I'm going to say, let's keep it clean. Let's give it a radius of 20 and a very clean height of, let's say, also 20. And we'll put that into a cloner and create a linear series of clones that will travel straight upward. And should we do an extra bit, like 51? Or I'm sorry, these are 20 tall, so like 21, just to go a little bit extra up. Yeah, so we can start sagging them, make as many of them as we want. So the radius is probably a little big right now. But actually, that's an aspect that we can sort of control. So radius of 10, just make it a little smaller. Okay, cool. So we get something like that. So let's do the basic version. I'm going to make a copy of the cylinder. I'll move this one down. And if I'm not mistaken, let me eyeball it. If I'm not mistaken, we need to, I think we can't link to a static object. We can't link to a collider. We have to link to a rigid body. But anyway, let's go step by step. So right click and we'll add a new simulation rigid body tag onto the stack, and control D right away, simulation scene zero gravity. So they should just float. And then I will also make a turbulence in the scene, make it pretty strong and give it a relatively large scale so we can actually see it doing something. So right now, if I were to hit play, hopefully we can see all of these, just drifting around, doing their own thing. And you can see there's sort of a scale to it and they're not falling out of the scene. So now we can right click and say actually, no, we don't right click. Under simulate, under connectors, we make a connector of some type. So I'm going to say I want to make we got all these different connector types. They all can turn into each other. So I guess we want an angular one. And I'm going to say, oh, I had the cloner selected when I made it. So you can see I already fed it in and you can see it's already making these connections. So that's a hinge based one. I guess actually I might want a spherical type connection. So you can see it's a ball and socket type. So you can see that each of these is pivoting from, let me grab the display, maybe make it a little bit smaller. You see each one of them is pivoting actually seemingly properly from the midpoint between them because they're all very evenly distributed. So, and as far as I can tell, actually out of the gate did the correct rotation. Hard to tell for sure, but it's automatically made all those. So let's just see what happens if I hit play. Maybe we lucked out. Yeah, okay, we lucked out. That just worked. And now look, now these are behaving like a snake. So essentially, just making a single connector, we are able to make the snake out of all of them, which is great. There's a time when I was considering making a plugin that would like do this type of thing for you. Now there are limitations, but that's working well as far as being kind of out of the box there. Now there, as far as I know, maybe we do a little experiment here. I'm gonna make a second connector and mode index. See, that's going to automatically link a bunch of them. What I'd like to do is make a fixed one and then limit it. The mode is index. Yeah, see, I don't even here see good ways of forcing a connection. So, hello, everybody who's showing up in the chat. Welcome, welcome. I don't think there's a way of making a fixed connector connecting. There's no way to make a fixed connector connect to one of the clones. So what I'm thinking we do instead is, and this is just what I think we have to do, is say simulate rigid body on this one. I'll just call this one the static one. And the static one, I'm going to go under forces, and I'm going to give it a very strong follow position and a very strong follow rotation. So even though that is now a rigid body, it's got a very, very strong forces saying, no, go right there. So now that that's happened, we can go into our connect, and I'm going to also drag in the static. I think I want that to come first. And did it automatically? I think as soon as I drag that in, I think it refreshed, and you see I made another connection. So I've now made a automatic connection to that one. So now if I hit play, hopefully, yeah, so now you see we have one that's stuck in place and all the other ones are free to do whatever they want. Now, when it did come to the Proton pack, there was a lot of things I did. I had like a lot of springs and things trying to maintain certain directions. We don't have springs yet. There are no springs in the new system. So we just have to let this kind of drift and do whatever it wants. So, but there are other things we can do. So what do we got? We got this connector. Right now it's ignoring the collisions. I say don't ignore the collisions. And yeah, now you can see that it's only bending a little bit because it's going to start bumping into the other cylinders. So essentially we can kind of use that as a fake way of making sure it doesn't go too far. So if I were to grab our cylinders and shrink them by one, I probably shouldn't be making dynamic changes while it's playing. But yeah, by shrinking those a little bit, they can now bend more. So it's kind of like, oh, how far do I want that to be able to bend? And I can just do it via collisions, which isn't bad. I would like, well, I'm sure, I have no idea, but I'm hoping that we get those spring connections in here as well. Because with spring connections, you could add extra force so that they essentially want to straighten out. But if they're forced, they'll just drift. But right now, nothing will return them back to their original position. Anyway, now that we've got kind of this tentacle, what's great is that it's very parametric. Let me make a quick folder here. Quick exchange, season 6. I'll just make a copy. Episode 8. Scene files. Oh, dang it. I'll just save it in here. Nope, I don't want to do that. Copy, folder, paste, delete. Cool. Yes, delete. So let's just make a tentacle. Okay, so now grabbing the cloner, what's great about this is I can just go and crank up my amount. And I think the one thing we have to do is click on, yeah, actually, maybe it automatically updated, maybe it didn't. There might be a checkbox to automatically update. It does say auto create. So we made more, and now you see it's taller, it's longer. And if I hit play, automatically those got connected to each other. So that would have been incredibly tedious in the past. So that by itself goes a really long way. So yeah, dig in that. And we've got some additional control we can do because if this is a cloner, I could make a plane effector and don't modify the position, but yes, modify the scale in a absolute way. And now I'm going to say I want to go, I'll say -1. So now they're all shrinking down. Maybe I want to keep that one. Z's normal. Okay, so now there should still be tall, I think. And now I can go into fields and drag in something like a step. So now you see each one gets smaller. I just got to figure out which axis I want, which I guessed wrong there. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's what I wanted. So Y isn't shrinking, but the other ones are. You see, each one gets smaller. Now, the one thing that this connector, well, maybe it's not the one thing, but something this connector can't do is it can't, if these are different distances apart, it doesn't really know how to handle that very well. So it's working really well with something evenly spaced. Now, that means we have the ability to scale these down, like to get thinner here, but we can't make them taller. We'd have to make them uniformly taller, if that makes sense. I'll shrink them down maybe a little less. Oh, I did minus 0.9. Yeah, so they'll shrink, and we make the initial one bigger. So let's increase our radius. We'll double that. So yeah, now you got this fatter tentacle at the bottom, and then it's going to stack up taller there. Everything should be fine. Everything should be updated. I'll hit save just to be careful. Hit play, and now you see that those actually are dynamic, and they've actually shrunk down. And you see because the radius is smaller, that the tip can actually bend further, which, depending on what you're doing, might be a good thing, might be a bad thing. Now, we got lots of different ways we can potentially be controlling this and making it somewhat real. If we're going back to kind of the proton beam, or even just, there's a tentacle of some sort, let's go and make a sphere. And I want it to it wants to get in the direction of the sphere. So a lot of different ways of doing it. I would probably just make a field force, simulate forces, field force, and we'll make it pretty strong. And I'll make a spherical field. And now you could use an attract. I don't like using the force attract because it's kind of got this exponential fall off, and I like it being linear. So I'm going to make this, and I'm going to say that there is no fall off, and also that the radius is going to be like enormous. So like essentially it's unlimited. And then I just make that spherical field a child of our sphere, reset the transform. So now that should be essentially an attraction point. Now, is our direction correct? I don't know. Let's make this 10 times stronger. And as far as I can tell, it looks like it's pushing it away instead of towards it. So that's pretty simple. Inside of our spherical field, I go to direction, and I'll say invert the direction, and immediately you see it looks like it's trying to now move in it, move towards it. So cool. I'll tell this don't draw the display box, and now you can see that this tentacle seems to want to go head towards that sphere. I should probably make that sphere a collider. So yeah, now it's going to be colliding with that. It's getting attracted to it a lot. And yeah, so now we've got this turbulence, but also generally speaking, the tentacle wants to go towards the sphere. Now this force is, we're having to go surprisingly strong on that, but I'm going to make the values very large. So it's really attracted to it. I'll make it very slippery. So it's free to sort of slide around on that surface. You see the tentacle kind of wrapping around there. It's kind of cool. And I should be free to grab, we'll hide the spherical field. And I should be free to grab this and move it around. And you see that this is going to constantly try and chase it around and grab at it. Now, there's a lot of velocity in the scene, so I think a friction is in order. So friction, and that should start slowing everything down. Let's see how much it's slowing it down. I'm gonna make it way longer or way stronger. Yeah, you see everything got calmed down a lot. So I'll do about 22. That should just make it so it's not, whipping about too much. And let's start moving this. And you can see that the tentacle always wants to head over there. I'm going to go, I want to have a decent amount of speed and force to it. So yeah, constantly trying to wrap around. And then, now we just push and pull with our strength of our turbulences and the scale of the turbulences. Like bigger and smaller ones are going to get attracted to different levels. And, potentially we want the sphere to have some sort of fall off. We've got that option. Give it this fall off. Make the radius smaller. See, no attraction there. Do this, and that's only attracted a little bit. So cool. Is there? I'm trying to think if there's a good way of making the tentacle. Like different steps along the tentacle be more attracted or less attracted. Like I'm not entirely sure how I would go about doing that. We could potentially make a MoGraph selection. I'm just not sure it feeds through that way. But that's working fine for now. hit save. If people have like follow-up questions on this specifically, let me know. But now let's say we want to make this a little bit more real as far as geometry is concerned. Um, the most straightforward way to do that, the way I always do it, is let's grab all of our cylinders and create a tracer object, and those will automatically be fed in. Hide the original stack, and if I say connect, I think connect all objects, yeah, don't worry about the vertices. Then now I've got this spline. If I play, hopefully, oh, is it not updating? Let's see. I remember bouncing into this. Do we have to put a matrix in between? I'm gonna make a matrix object and say, okay, matrix, you are cloning onto an object. The object is going to be the cloner, and you're going to clone onto the axis of each. And yeah, see, that is able to properly see it. I don't know why the tracer doesn't. So now we can tell the tracer to view the matrix instead of, yeah, tell the tracer to look at the matrix instead of the original one. And now you'll see, if I hide this, that we now have a line traveling through. Excellent. And now that we have a line, we usually keep this on for reference, feed that into a sweep, feed in an end side, T for scale, make it as small as the base or thereabouts. And then just grab the sweep, and I'll say my end growth, not end growth, but end scale shrinks down to also pretty much match. And, you know, we could use that index to like make each of these different thicknesses. And if it was like, let's say it got thinner and then thicker again at the end type of thing, we could go into details and scale it via the details remaps. But yeah, now we get the actual tentacle wrapping around doing its thing. So, you know, that's going to look a little bit better, or at least a little more realistic. So that becomes a rig. So we can make a null, and everything involved in that is going to be the static, the matrix, and I guess even the sweep if we want to keep them all combined. I think we can do that. I guess what I want to do is see if we can actually move some things around, which I'm not certain that we can. But if I grab the static, am I able to move it? Yeah, I can just grab the tail of this thing or the base of it, and I'm free to take that and kind of move it around, and everything else is going to try and catch up and stay connected. Hit undo, it jumps back nicely. And then we just call this one. I should be able to copy paste and actually pause. It's a good idea. And make sure that they're not completely on top of each other. Yeah, cool. So now we got two of them. Now, keep in mind, we got lots of things like both of these are receiving essentially the same turbulence. It seems small enough that they seem independent, but if they get close together, the same wind would be blowing on them. So each rig could end up getting their own turbulence on there. So they'd be getting slightly different behaviors. But now you see we get both of them. And because they're fully dynamic, they should be like these tentacles could kind of tie into a knot. They bounce off of each other, but they're drifting around doing their own thing on the overall setup. Very nice. And if I want to change either of them, I think we can just go back to the cloner and say, all right, well, make it 55 long. Whole thing gets taller. In theory, I'm not even going to go and click on it because maybe that triggers a refresh. Let's just see if those updated. And yeah, those updated just by changing that. Although that one's exploding. Oh, why is that one exploding? I will click on the connects. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. That's something I knew. I was like, there's some limitation. There's something I have to leave out of the hierarchy. There's I hope they change it in the future, but these connect objects, the connectors are relative to the world position instead of relative to their local position. So they always have to be at world 0. So I could pull them out of the hierarchy. Pulling stuff out of the hierarchy is kind of a pain because then you don't know what's associated with what. So here's a nice little workaround. I could say rigging tag and make a constraint, and I want to transform or control the position. So I can just say, hey, I want to take on the position and the rotation of something else. And I'll just make a null, and I'll just call that null 0. So that becomes our world 0. And I'll say, hey, this connector, no matter where its parent moves, it is always going to snap back to this position. And now I can copy that tag onto our other connector. And now if I click on that connector, you can see it moved from here over to there. And now they're at world 0, which means the relative connections to them are offset by 0. And now, hopefully, we could manipulate these, move them around however we want to, but the connections will be proper. And now you see these aren't exploding from each other. Good to note. Lignazio, I don't pros or cons versus using the spline dynamics or IK dynamics. The spline, you can't control right now. There's no way of controlling thickness on the spline, so we wouldn't we wouldn't be able to manipulate the stack here to be shrinking and have that accurately simulate. If they could be the same size, then yes, you could just use a spline. That is true. And IK dynamics, they will collide with an object, but I don't think two tentacles could collide with each other. And I doubt that they could even collide with themselves. Like a single tentacle wouldn't be colliding properly with one. I think you can do some sort of avoidance, which I have done like back in the day, but it's just not as good of a method. And I'm not sure how many of these we can make until the system starts getting a little slow. But let's copy and paste two more of those. Hit play again. With that change we made, this should automatically work. Very simple copy pastes. So yeah, all these tentacles. This radius is relatively small, so I'll make that bigger. Yeah, so now you start getting them all layering up, like kind of holding on to the thing. So yeah, very cool. Any specific follow-up questions to this setup? Like obviously we could, you could make more subdivisions if you want it to be more detailed. We can take these final tubes and we could throw those into a subdivision surface of some sort, or we could tell the tracer to have subdivisions in between, because right now you see those can get a little bit chunky there. But yeah, look, they're colliding really well. They're layering up on top of each other. All of the dynamic forces should be individually controllable. Doing stuff like these big turbulences, I think, stylistically can go a long way, where you get these kind of coherent behaviors. I wonder, something that would be kind of fun. I don't know. I'll save this because that's a good place for that one to be. And what I'm going to do, just for fun, is let's make a master tentacle here. So let's say number one is going to be the main one. And I'll make it, we'll put more clones onto it. So we'll make that one up to 75. And the cylinders for that one will be thicker, and which probably means oh, hang on. Oh, it's hiding. There we go. So now I'll thicken up that. So it's just kind of like the bigger tentacle. And so we can see it clearly. Automatic, and we'll make it, we'll just make it blue. Blue's a kind of neutral color. Okay, and then I'm going to move the other tentacles here. And I'm just going to kind of put them around, because something I want to try is what happens if we kind of have a master tentacle and the other ones kind of want to like chase it around and maybe kind of wrap around it. I don't know. I haven't really experimented with this specific type of thing, so let's just see what we end up with. So all this should be continuing to work just as we had it. I'll hide that cloner just so we're not seeing kind of the double thing. So yeah, now it's just going to be wrapping around the sphere just like it had been. But now going into the field force, I'm going to say, don't worry about that spherical field. And for the most part, I'll just delete out the sphere. We don't need that. So now these are all just drifting around, doing their own thing. I'm going to say that, there's a couple things I want to do. In this field force, I shall drag in this main tracer. So now we've got this tracer with a really strong strength. And if we activate our display, you can see it's really small there. So I'm going to X, Y, Z. I can't think of a good way of doing it besides just making it real big. We're going to lose some resolution here, but yeah, bit of a cross section here. Okay. So you can now see that essentially this tentacle is giving some directional information. saying like, oh, everything move in that direction. If I move into the main tab here and I say it is along and I'll do an offset of 100%, now essentially everything's trying to move in the same orientation as the main tentacle. For the most part, all I care about is the main tentacle right now. And I want to see if it is influenced to kind of stay straight, which at a glance, I feel like it is. You see that the line, it's kind of billowing along itself. So it's trying to go up. If I turn off this field force immediately, I think you're going to see all these are free to kind of start wiggling around. If I reactivate this, you see that there's a wind blowing along it. I think in the long run, that's going to kind of straighten it out. So that's kind of cool. So that's maybe a way that the line itself can be influencing it and being like, no, kind of straighten up. The I don't know what this would do, but let's see what experimentally would happen if we do the opposite. And I'm going to say invert direction. So now it's always pulling in the opposite direction it was, which to me probably means it's going to naturally want to kind of clump up a little bit. You see how it's kind of like snaking. It's kind of slithering backwards. So that's kind of fun. I love doing these types of feedback loops. Really, I'm just looking at the blue one right now. That's the only one that's kind of like feedback looping. All the other ones are just like drooping right now because they're not being influenced. But yeah, look at this thing kind of snake and whip around. If this was disconnected, I think it would be kind of just snaking along through the air, which is pretty cool. Windbush, what's going on? But yeah, now we get that kind of neat feedback loop. Now we could go and invert the direction again. So now in theory, at least my theory would be given a little bit of time, that line is, yeah, you see it immediately going, and look at it, it's kind of slither. It's moving forward, slithering in its natural direction. And eventually these will follow that same direction, even though with them getting tangled up. So that's pretty cool. I am digging that. But now I'm going to say that the main one, let's just call this main snake. I'm going to say the main snake is not going to get those forces applied. So I'm going to exclude the field force. Okay. So now, essentially, we should, in theory, see these snakes. The secondary ones want to kind of do what this main one is doing, because you can see that the forces that are blowing on them are drifting around. Yeah, look at how they start mimicking that direction. So that's kind of cool. But then the reason I separated out, the main reason, is I'm going to drag in a second copy of the tracer. And this one I'll say tracer dot radius. And this one, if we're being smart, we name dot along. So now we got the radius one. So instead of us tracing along the spline, I'm going to say I want to trace the radius. And then we have to type in a radius. And the fall off, I don't think matters too much. I'm just going to make it super huge. And it looks like by default, it's pushing them away. All those other ropes are wanting to stay as far away from the main snake as possible. We want the opposite. So under direction, we'll say invert direction. And hopefully immediately we're going to see these start trying to head. Yeah, now they're all pulling in. And right now they're clustering up on the nearest point that they're on, which makes sense. And yeah, look, we get this nice cluster going. So that's kind of cool. So now let's add those two things together. So I'm going to say, I want you to travel along and base off the radius, and I'll add them together. So now, oh, look, immediately you see how they start slithering up the first one. So yeah, now the first one's got all this influence with these wanting to go where the main one goes. So that's pretty cool. It would probably be a good idea to make the first one really heavy. So I can grab the two rigid bodies of the main snake and grab their mass and say, hey, you are 10 times heavier than the other ones. Because what might happen is the small ones are essentially just as heavy as the big one. So the small ones will be bopping the big one around, and that would be moving. But now I've said the big one's a lot heavier. So the small ones will have very little influence as far as actually connecting with it. Now, the one thing I can't think of any way of making these naturally spin. Never mind. I just thought of a way to do it. What I want to do is have these kind of want to twist around the main one. Right now, you see they want to be near it, but there's nothing twisting them. You see they are twisting around a little bit. And immediately you see them get pulled to it when we get that reset. And let's see, what should we do? There's a lot of different just fun things to explore here. I'm going to grab all three of the little snakes and grab the forces. I'm going to say forces exclude, and I'm going to say no turbulence for them. So now there's no wind blowing on them whatsoever. The wind is only on the main one. So those are going to be very linear. But now the big one is, you see, whenever these are twisting, it's not because of wind, it's only because the big one told them to. Now, what I want them to do is kind of spiral around. I still want them to get attracted to it. I still want them to travel along it, generally speaking. But I want them to want to spin around it. Now, within the context of this field force, there is no way to, I can't think of a way that there'd be a spiral around it. That just isn't the thing. But and if we tried to make a general spiral, if we made like a radial effect and we put it here, that radial effect wouldn't be based around the coil, the snake here. It would just be in world space. So how do we make something want to coil around our main snake here? And I'm thinking, let's go and this is kind of fun. Let's make a helix. I do this technique not infrequently. We'll make a helix. We'll aim it upward, and we'll make it the correct height-ish. Doesn't really matter. It'll snap, but I'll just do that. And I want a bunch of spirals. I'm not sure how many, but I'll increase that amount. And here we go. A bunch of them. Okay, so now, just so it's very visually clear, I'll move this down below the tracer, like that. Right, make a deformer. The deformer will be a spline wrap. And I want to spline wrap the helix to the tracer along Y plus. And now, hopefully, we've got a spiral. And that spiral, if I hit play, as our snake snakes around, you see the spiral is moving along with it. Now, the radius is really big right now, so it's going to start looking all wobbly. But even there, I think it'd still kind of work. But let's go and say our start radius and end radius will be much smaller numbers. And now you see we get this lovely little coil twisted all around it, which I'm totally digging. That's working well. We could try increasing our spin a little bit more. We can only go so far until we need to add more subdivisions, and I don't want to add too many. So yeah, now we get all these points spiraling around. So now what happens? Yeah, let me double my points. Oops, do that, and double points. Yeah, just enough spirals so that I can keep on going. In fact, let's say none, and then put 300 points that spin around. So you see subdivisions there, but that's fine. Now, let's reactivate our field force, hit play, and now that's good. But now, let's save it because it's going well. Let us go into our field force, and we will also add in this helix. So the helix, let's isolate it. So we got the helix, and I also want this to travel the curve along it with a full offset, so it's full power all the way. And in theory, these are going to, it's whatever it's nearest. So like essentially that spiral is kind of for real. Like it wants to spiral around. So without those other field forces turned on, let's see if these kind of feel like they whip out. Yeah, immediately. Look how much they're twisting. Oh my God, it's working so well. Wow, I'm super happy that works. And this is just the helix. That's not even attracted to it anymore. So that's pretty cool. So let's go and start all over again, and we'll add them all together. So now it wants to spin around, it wants to be attracted to it, and it wants to travel along kind of an upward direction. And we can merge those ratios however we like. But excellent, working pretty much exactly the way I want it to. And you see all the other ones organically twisting around perfectly, behaving how I want it to. Twisting around. Now it might be, I'm not going to spend the effort to do it, but we could definitely make multiple field forces. Like each one could have their own field force. We could have one tentacle want to be spinning the other way, or maybe there's 3 different helixes, so each one is trying to achieve a slightly different twist. Because right now that you say they're all very similar, they're tending to kind of pair up on top of each other. Maybe it would be a good idea to put the turbulence back in on each of them. Like maybe that could be a thing. There's a lot that we could keep on adding onto it. I wonder, like, essentially what I want to try now is let's just make the sub snakes taller. So let's go down to cloner, and I'll make all of them 75. I'll make one of them 99, and I'll make one of them 45. So 3 different snake lengths here. So one of them is longer than the purple one. I just want to see what they do. I like seeing those field forces, but at this point, we might as well just say don't display those. Save, hit play. So it's really strong. So I was curious if that would wrap around more at the base, and potentially we could make it do that. But yeah, it's just getting attracted to the nearest point there. So the one that was extra long is just going to kind of coil up on top of itself near the tip of the snake because that was the nearest actual point for it to head towards. I'm trying to think of any way we could make it like hang out lower. I mean, potentially we could on that particular one weaken the along so that the forces are more attracted down here. And even here, with the way we've combined them, I wouldn't be surprised if we could turn off a lot of the stuff. Like right now, like them spiraling around might naturally twist. So we might not need that attraction. So let's just see what happens if we do no attract. These are now not attracted to the snake, but they will spin around it. So now very naturally, yeah, they are coiling around. Now keep in mind, they all start in the same location. So it's not surprising that they are tangling up with each other. But yeah, now the tip of that one isn't attracted to the nearest point of the blue snake. So it's kind of free to drift around. But you see, generally speaking, it's got to hang out near the end. And then we still have this along, which is constantly trying to make everything travel upward. So now I'm just curious what happens if we turn that one off as well. And let's start it over. So now they do want to spin around, but they're not constantly being pulled upward anymore. So they might just kind of eventually coil up like in one spot. They do want to spiral, and the only reason they look like they're twisting around is because, they're getting whipped around the entire thing. I like the way that those coils look. I would probably end up leaving some along turned on, but make it way weaker. So like they do want to kind of travel upward a little bit, but they wouldn't have to. Although I gotta say, right now they're doing an excellent job of sneaking around, and it looks really cool. And again, look, I mean, these are accurately kind of colliding with each other because this is all geometry. Like the things we're seeing right now, these are all fake. These are all just sweeps that come after the fact. There's a big pile of cylinders here that are actually doing the work for us. And let's play through. It wrapped around perfectly with only that helix trick. But let me just for fun, I'm going to activate the along and let's see what kind of behavior we get. And yeah, immediately see all of these feel like they want to start creeping up. They feel like they're kind of blowing along the surface. So I think a little bit of along would go a long way. That's something we can turn on, and we could reactivate this radius. So now, I think they will get attracted to it, but for the most part, I think this radius. Yeah, I mean, it does multiple things, but it'll cluster this thing up on the end. So a lot of different things, a lot of fun, different ways of doing that. And keep in mind, we still got we got this main tentacle doing its own thing. So we could tell this main one to be attracted to the sphere again, and it would be attracted to the sphere, and these other ones would be trying to like snake around the base one. So a lot of fun things to do, layer up. Let's see. We got a couple people subscribing over on Twitch, which I super appreciate. Lignazio subscribing for 26 months in a row. And Ethan Goldhammer subscribing. Winbush subscribing. Thank you, everybody. If you have a free Twitch subscription, that is awesome. It helps support Rocket Lasso. Let me go and check out the chat and see if anybody has follow-ups on here because we can keep on exploring it because it's going well. Save. Appreciate it. Dean, will the snake cluster work if you put the cloners in a multi-instance mode? No, they won't work in multi-instance mode because simulation doesn't work on multi-instance mode. So yeah, that will not work. And then we couldn't clone these snakes. Like if I were to be like, oh, I've got this rig, now clone the rig. Like there's no way to do that with the new simulation system. The old simulation system could get cloned, but the new one only operates on the cloner level, not on the child level. So, and yeah, just so we can do the proof because you never know if I'm wrong. I will switch this cloner to multi-instance only on that one snake and hit play, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere now. Oh, it's getting real weird. Actually, it looks like they are successfully clones, but the connector can't see them anymore. So it looks like there's a bunch of individual cylinders that are just kind of drifting along in space, creating that kind of explosion. Interesting. I didn't think that rigid bodies worked at all on multi-instances. Let's see. Yep, that's what you're referring to. Craig saying, I'm doing a golf strike currently, wondering if you could approach grass particles flying up behind the ball. Okay, that's a different question. Possibly take a look at that. Um, I suppose particles could be used for secondary effects. The little streams that wrap around the main stream. I'm not sure what you mean by that, French fish. Um, like in theory, we could be having particles be a part of this system. We could have particles, drifting around, and they could have that same field force wanting the particles to kind of drift around the overall snake, but they'd be unconstrained, like they'd be moving quicker, so it would look very different. Um, yeah, cool, excellent, thank you. Do I remember the no keyframes showreel of Maxon? I do remember the no keyframe showreel. It was really cool. Any idea how they did that scene with the quills drawing on the ground? Okay, so that's a different question, which I'm totally cool with going and exploring. I can go and Google up the no keyframes short that was made. Um, that was when simulation stuff came out. I wonder if field forces even existed then. They might not have. It's going back a ways. But any other questions on the snakes before we move on? Oh, looks like switching that to multi-instance broke that snake. So I might need to like reactivate that properly. Cool. Okay. Yeah, that repaired the snake, turning on and off the connect. Wee. I'm going to look at these coil, and then I'm going to grab the field force and then reverse the direction of the helix. Which honestly, even the helix has a slight upward twirl to it. Something to keep in mind. Actually, if that was something that we should keep in mind. The coil, the helix actually does automatically give us upward movement, which is something I was thinking about because it is a helix. It's a spiral. If you wanted them to be truly just spinning around it, you would actually clone a series of circles up along the main snake, but we twisted around the main one. So I think there is some upward movement. So in theory, if we put less spirals, it would have more upward movement. I don't know that this would be overly visual. But let's like make it 10 times less. And yeah, as soon as I made it 10 times less, you see they all started feeling like they want to travel up along the surface more. So there's just less coils, and that made them go up. So yeah, okay, it was nice that that theory was correct. And then let's do what I said, which is field force, helix, direction. So we'll let these twist around a little bit to start out with. Snake in and snake in. And then I'll just say invert direction. And suddenly they'll be wanting to spiral the opposite way and also slightly downward. It's going to take a while for those to fully circle all the way around. Snakeity, snakeity, and invert. Whoa. Okay, a lot of motion going on all over the place. They seem confused. Yeah, you can definitely the coils are whipping around in all sorts of weird ways. Yeah, it's taking a while. Now you see, look immediately. You see these are starting to pile around the base because the spiral is slightly pulling downward. So yeah, I think they're just going to be. Yeah, you see them kind of just snaking around that direction now. So this one, you probably would want this along to spiral the other direction. So as soon as I turn that on, now they're going to want to go upward because that's this along is going to be more powerful than the subtle helix pulling down, and they will slowly wrap around the other direction. So yeah, fun combinations of them. It's always important to remember the ramifications of that type of thing. The that helix technique I've done where you spline wrap a helix. That's why I make a lot of like tornado effects. It's like a really good place to start with those. Um, Flavio, always to simulate these casters rotating around in real life. I'm assuming, Flavio, that you had a link, and you have to go on Twitch if you actually want to post the link and make sure if it is a link that's either it's got to be to something generic, like a product image or something, or I need to see the artist or studio who made it. But the link, if you put a link on YouTube, it's just not going to work. So if you head over to Twitch, just search for Rocket Lasso on Twitch, and you can post the link on there, and I'll keep an eye out for it. But I was intrigued by the no keyframes question, and you were mentioning the quills drawing on the ground. So let's see if we can find that. So yeah, give me a second here. YouTube. No keyframes. C4D. There it is. 480p. This is going back a ways. Oh, well, it's 480p from 14 years ago from Expanza. Not surprising, but the resolution from 14 years ago makes sense. Like that's going back a ways. No keyframes. So yeah, this was a really cool animation where the names on the tin. There was no keyframes on this. And it's when we had all like the rigid body stuff first getting added, or the simulation stuff. Very cool. Motion graphics have come a long way, but it's still a cool piece. Okay, so those drifting around. I'm trying to keep an eye out for the quill section, but I don't mind playing through. I haven't seen this in a while. When this came out, everybody's like, "Oh, it's so beautiful!" Blurp. Whee. Okay, so, okay, so you said quill. I didn't see anything quill-like, but there's still more. Those plants grew, but I doubt that's what you meant. Those are cool. All twitchy. Bunk, bunk. Oh yeah, knocking off these. I wonder if that's an old particle rig knocking that stuff off. Maybe this is the quill. Yeah, okay, so that's the quill effect. I'm not sure why they're not quite sure why they're spiraling the way that they are. Yeah, I'm definitely not sure why they're spiraling the way that they are. I mean, my assumption would be that they would be actually kind of spinning, because you could do that. That's cool. 11.5. It's going back a ways. So yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that link, Flavio. Okay, new file. Think. Oh yeah, so I guess we should try it with the new rigid bodies. I know how that works with the simulation, but here's my first thought. And I don't know if this will be a thing. And they could have faked it. They could have made it real. They could have done a completely different way. But let's kind of do an old spin the coin type trick. So I'm going to make a coin. And we'll try spinning it with the new system. Collider, cylinder, simulation, rigid body. And I think that they added in the custom initial velocity. There, custom angular velocity. That's what we need. The speed, X, Y, Z. I'm going to, well, just see what that does. Okay, yeah, that's correct orientation. We're going to say way more. We're going to crank up the subdivisions. Make kind of a gold color, just make it pop out a bit more. All right, so now it should be spinning pretty quick. Hit play. We spin. And the rigid bodies, let's get rid of the friction and the bounce. The old rigid bodies would actually do a really, really good job of simulating this type of thing. And that's doing a pretty good job. You see it kind of get that wobble. It ran out of energy relatively quickly, but I think that there is the built-in simulation 2% damping. So I'm going to get rid of that. No 2% damping. Spin. Now, is that going to kind of go forever now with zero damping? With zero friction. Yeah, so that you saw that 2% damping I just got rid of in the simulation settings, like dramatically changed. If every single frame is losing 2% of its energy, it's going to slow down fast. So wait, yeah, that actually worked pretty well. So you see that was, that was spinning and moving around in kind of a cool, crazy way. So is it possible that they did that and then it's kind of like you pick a point like that kind of read as let me give this some direction as well. If I were to fling that and spin it, that you kind of get this crazy path being traveled as it spins around. And I don't know if we can make it really tiny. Is that viable? Let me make that real tiny and spin. Can I handle that? I mean, it fell down real quick. So I'm kind of inclined to make it still be large, just so we have control over it. Bigger floor. So let me see if in theory I can do an idea of what maybe they were doing. I have no idea if it's actually the case. Just for simplicity, I don't know if this is strictly necessary, but I'll make a matrix object, clone onto an object. The object will be the cylinder, and I'm going to just clone onto the axis. So there should be a single matrix clone just hanging out right there, like doing the same motion. So then faking the quill, y minus 500 tall, bottom radius, I don't know, not that much, 25. And let's see what else. Shift C, search for the word axis. Drop that in the cylinder. Tell that to pivot all the way, so it's pivoting, from that location. And then maybe, I don't know if I would actually want to do this, but I'm going to the matrix. This is kind of silly. I'm going to make the matrix not clone onto the object anymore. And do we need the matrix? Maybe we don't. Maybe we do. I'll make a null instead. The null, I'll add a rigging constraint, and we need to see if it can see the cylinder, which I kind of don't think it will. If we hit play, does the null move? Oh, it does. Cool. Okay, so the null's moving. So now that just becomes a secondary thing that we can link to. So now I can say add another rigging. I guess it's fine to just copy that. We'll copy that over. And now I'll say don't follow the rotation, only follow the position. So now we should have, we got this little pointy thing moving wherever the coin is going. So that's kind of cool. So then, I'm not entirely sure where I'm going with this, if it's going to end up working out. A couple extra height segments, just to mimic what we were seeing a little bit there. One time when I was in Munich, I got to go visit the Axponza studio, which was pretty cool. Fit parent. I suppose that's fine. Taper. Minus. Oh, I guess I should have done it on the cylinder and done the opposite. That's fine. It's kind of exaggerated. Now, if I wanted to, so we kind of, we have this natural movement from the coin in theory. And then potentially we'd even want to give it a little bit of spin on another axis. So I could say like 0.01. So 1%, 2% of the spin will be along another axis. I want it to be along that way. I might have done the wrong one, so we'll find out quickly, maybe. So anyway, that should kind of make it roll a little bit sideways. So I don't know if this is a good idea, but I'm going to copy another null as a child of the one that's tracking it, and then move it downward, kind of the length of the coin. So now we got this little guy hanging out on the bottom. And I'm going to say this one is going, this is currently, did I tell it to track the cylinder? Okay, I want that one to track this null now. And maybe let's just have it track the rotation. Why not? Let's see what happens. So yeah, now that's on the bottom, and the idea is we're going to get this exaggerated tipping movement. So now we get this vibe of a spinning top. I don't think we get that thing to spin like a top, like the geometry just isn't down. But you see, we get that whole thing moving around doing its thing. Now I don't know. I have no idea if this is what they did, but if I say don't do the rotation, and then I say take this null and offset it slightly, then now that's going to be spiraling around. So yeah, now that's a little bit more chaotic. That's going to be, because that's big up there, it looks fine. But if we now grab our cone and trace it, we might need to do like a lot of subframes here, which I don't really feel like doing. Don't trace the object, just trace the axis. So we'll make the floor invisible. All my filters are missing right now, so let me turn off the work plane. Hit play. So my thought is, yeah, it's going really fast, but as this slows down a little bit, do you see how we start getting these kind of cool like spiral patterns? Like that looks, this is why I thought, okay, so it's working pretty well, where that kind of looks like what we saw them making. And given the old system, you could have put this into a cloner, made a whole bunch of them, made a whole bunch of different ones, and potentially, look at all these different spirals we're getting. Like, so that's working pretty well for getting kind of this chaotic motion. Oh, it fell. Oh, it's spiraling down because it fell off the platform. So yeah, I think that's not horrible. It's not a horrible interpretation of what might have been happening there. Um, Potentially, we'd need subframes or have the entire thing be slower. And of course, I was using the old simulation system, and I'm using the new one because I kind of want to see if it could handle this coin. I'm also curious if I did the correct rotation, which the only way I can think to check is to put it on the other one and see if it's better or worse. Woo, 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 woo. Yeah, I don't know if it's better or worse, but you see, we get this chaotic spiral going. Oh, look at like that's great. Yeah, very pleased with that motion. Wee, it's gonna fall off any second, and gone. Nope, nope. It's oh, there it fell off. So yeah, I mean, does that kind of inspire as a coin tip, the whole thing went up. That's funny. I can potentially think of ways of getting around that because it is just stuck to the bottom of the coin. So if the coin rotates, that line went upward, which is kind of fun. Demi, yeah, this is a wacky one, but those the reference that we were looking at, those spirals were so random and organic looking. The only way I could, that to me, that's the motion of a spinning top. So, that's what we did here. Yeah, we could do a couple more things with these nulls to make it like be a little bit more stuck. I think we will get diminishing returns the more time we spend on this one. But I'm digging it. Follow questions on this one. Who asked the question? Who did ask the question? Is it going back a ways? Scroll. Who did ask that one? I've completely lost the question. Oh, it was Demi. Okay, so yeah, Demi, if you seem happy. Demi, I agree that it's possible that they would hand draw some splines and just travel along the splines. But if the point of the thing was that there's no keyframes, then you would have to, it's like at that point, it's like you see, this has no keyframes, but if I were to draw a spline, I need that spline to be animating on, then it's like, well, I don't want a keyframe, but I'm going to have to drive it with like Espresso. At that point, you're keyframing by a different name. So if the idea was like, no, you're kind of getting some legit motion, this is giving you legit motion, where drawing a spline ahead of time is not going to be giving you legit motion. And honestly, some of these lines, even the ones that they zoomed up on, had an imperfection to them that I don't think an artist would draw in there. Like you'd make it look nicer. Like some of these were kind of like weird and choppy. Um, it's just a thought. I don't know for sure. Um, but yeah, that's where my head is at. Oh, the light trails specifically? I mean, these are all perfectly on the ground. So I guess they all look like they're aiming upward. Oh man, I remember, I know how to do, oh, that's going back a ways. I don't know how to do it in Redshift. Obviously, that 14-year-old thing, Redshift didn't exist yet. Um, Let me think. I'm just going to make that editable, copy it, hit undo. We haven't saved this, so I'll save it as spinning coin trail. Okay, new file, paste in the spline just so we have some reference. Now the whole thing was kind of moving up and down. I'm going to cheat and select all my points, shrink them down to 0. So it's flat on the ground, flat on the ground. Okay, cool. My thought is that that is just a volume. Well, first of all, you could just make a light glow, but it has a vertical beam. Actually, well, okay, you see, we kind of get these beams of light going upward. So there's two things you do. One, kind of make it real by having a volumetric light shine light upward. Which I gotta say, I'm not very familiar with volumetric lights in Redshift. I've done them before. I just haven't done them in long enough that I don't want to be spending a bunch of clunky time doing it. An alternative is faking it. So what I was going to say, maybe we can do it. Let me see if I can, because I haven't done this in years and years and years. Can we fake it with the old standard technique? Maybe. Sweep, and this is what they would have maybe done. Two-sided, scale down. Cool. So it's a little messed up in the beginning. I'm going to ignore that. We get this flat line traveling around. If we wanted to be kind of a little better, I'll drop in the subdivision surface so it looks a little more squiggly and round. So I'll throw that into a connect because why not? And then is this going to work? I don't know. Standard light. Spotlight. When's the last time any of you have done this technique? I'm going to aim the spotlight upward. We're going to change this. Remember these? So we got a spotlight. I'm going to make a parallel square spotlight. So we have a parallel square spotlight, and we'll go to visibility. What do we do here? Visible volumetric. Yeah, so reverse volumetric is what we're going to be doing. If we make a visible light, let's just see what we're dealing with here. And hit Alt R. Oh, nope, that triggers a NVIDIA thing. So I'll go to render and, oh man, interactive render region. Yeah, remember this? Yeah, interactive render region. So that, you see, we get a vertical light shining upward, showing all that stuff. Cool. So then I'm going to grab my light and move it downward on top of these lines. And then we'll say, okay, you're actually a not visible light, but a volumetric light. And now you see that we get these volumetric lights traveling upward, but this is casting a shadow. So now we say inverse volumetrics, and now only where it's struck geometry is it casting light. Details, visibility. I'm trying to remember where the resolution is. Oh, sample distance. You lower the sample distance. Yeah, you lower the sample distance, and that means you get an increased resolution. So there you get that. Grab our light, general, green, 300%. Yeah, so you get your bright green going, and we pull this down. Man, this is fun. Old school. Yeah, so this is the old standard / physical way of getting an invert light, which is pretty cool. Like a nice simple bit of geometry to cast that upward. And honestly, that's probably what they did. That would have been rendered in physical probably. So you get this effect. Okay, so now let's deactivate interactive render region. I'll save this just for anybody who wants to play. That is a trip. When's the last time we did that? Okay, so now we get rid of that light. Okay, so here was my thought. If we go back to Redshift even, we could fake this pretty easily. we could fake it in several ways. So the first one, like we'd make this line pretty thin, and we can just make a simple redshift material. Redshift render view should be safe enough. In our redshift material, no color, no reflection, an emission of 5 with a green, we'll go kind of teal-ish color. So yeah, that's super bright. And then we can go Control B, add in some redshift post effects, and do something like some bloom. Lower the threshold. And you see, we start getting kind of a cool glow around there. So I was like, okay, that's a cool glow. Now, like I said, we'll be faking this, but let's make a secondary sweep. So I'll make an instance of our spline. I'll duplicate that entire hierarchy, delete the original, and just I'm putting in the instance so that I only have one of the master spline in case I want to change something. So then we've got our end side. I might actually grab the segment, search Shift C, search for segment. There's a node based segment, so I can make that. And I did that because we have this offset setting. So I'm going to say I want to sweep, and let's change our plane. None of our directions are giving me what I want. None of these are vertical. So we need to make a rail spline. So the third spline is a rail spline. We just put in the copy again. I'll move this one upward. And as soon as I move it upward, now I'm getting what I want. So you can see we're getting a vertical extrusion here. And it actually pivoted correctly, which is interesting. I thought that, honestly, oh, it must be because it's automatically mapping to the spline. Now that does give us some cool opportunities to reveal things, which, yeah, maybe we'll do. But anyway, now we get this line going. So let's make a duplicate of this material, and I'll make a ramp, and the ramp will control the opacity, and we'll put the ramp on the second one, and see if we can get this working. What is it currently doing? Okay, you see it's fading out on the end, which is kind of cool. But let's grab our ramp, change it to be horizontal. And now you see it's fading up from the bottom. So I will invert my gradient. And now you see we get a line that's bright on the bottom and fades out near the top. Now this is set up to be super bright. So is it a good idea to lower the brightness down to 1? So we're going to get a little bit more of a linear fall off on that. So yeah, you could do that. And then, all via this ramp, we can modify this to be like more transparent. I'm not sure what would be realistic here, but yeah, something like that, totally working for me. If you want to make it a little bit more, less uniform, perhaps, let's make a Maxon noise, make a composite, and I will feed in the ramp as the base color, the Maxon noise as our blend. Is there a shortcut built in to click the solo button? I can't remember what it is. Let's solo the noise, and it's noise based, global scale. Input is based on the object. Is that vertical? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to stretch it out to be really vertical and start scaling this up until I get kind of a pattern that I can very clearly visibly see. And then color composite, solo, set that to overlay. There's several that we could do here. We say overlay. Now you see it's going to be kind of fading out a little bit more. Maybe even multiply would be better. Yeah, a little multiply, and then unsolo. And now you see we get kind of these random beams going. And you can go back to this and say, well, let's not go fully dark on those, and pull that to something else. Ramp that, and now should get those a little bit more solid. Oh yeah, you could totally do like an Aurora Borealis type thing with this. So yeah, now we get these moving. You could animate this noise to have these kind of fading in. You don't need them fading in at all if you don't want to. Yeah, those are currently multiplying. So as we make this one lighter and lighter, hopefully, yeah, that just fades out. We just get a little bit of variation. And then Oh yeah, so yeah, I mean, essentially that's the glow technique that I was talking about there. But the one, you saw already that if we move up our instance, our spine rail, we can make that taller, so the glow can be as tall as we want. But what I'm thinking is we make that 0. Let's pause that. Um, Save it. Okay, yeah, so we got our line. I will reset transform, so it's back at 0, and then that's the rail spline. So if we make something like a plane, put that in the instance, say you are a point deformer, it's now deforming those points vertically. And of course, you know where I'm going with this. If we go to the fall off, I can make a linear field and flip it around the other direction. And now I could pull this through and have this fade up into whatever size I want. So we can put some random variation. So now we can have this drift across and get any animation. So, and you can even reshape that, of course. So I'd probably just make a curve and let's do an ease in, ease out. Make those curves a little bit smoother. Grab our linear field. This could now be keyframed. We can travel it along. We could drive this via several things. Linear field is just a simple one. But yeah, have those drift along. So it's like your light could slowly get shining upward. And let's say redshift again. Everything's super vertical. So I think that'll just work. Yeah, so that'll fade out over there. And if you want some variation on the height there, let's turn off the linear field. And we could instead say, I'll just override it. Random field, set the normal, don't affect the color. And yeah, actually already you can see that working. You see that each of them is drifting up and down based on this noise. And of course that noise could be animated. The noise could be bigger or smaller to get it to be more or less coherent. So yeah, look at that. I like that a lot. Like you get these random noises. And even right now, if I hit play, those you see, those are animating, which is pretty cool. You could even kind of fake it so those could animate looking forward because you can always grab your random field and move it. And you see if I move this where it's actually moving the direction of the noise as well. And that could be multiplied by like our linear field. I'll just turn that off for a second. So if we took that and said multiply, now you get that random animation and you can get your fall off passing through. So best of all worlds, all combining there. Any questions on that one? Now, keep in mind that is a singular line in the middle. You might kind of see this harsh line right there. Potentially, I could see like spending more time and really finagling the brightness here, where maybe I do make this 5 times brighter, which is going to make that blow out, which actually right there, it does look pretty cool. But then maybe I just want it blown out at the very base where it's near the other thing. So we go back to our ramp and does that push it up? No, black is where it fades out. So essentially I'm going to grab like the 1/5. I'm just eyeballing it. So, it's about halfway. So right here, about 1/5, and drag that way back. So in spite of it being like 5 times brighter, I grabbed only 1/5 of the brightness range. So now we go from super bright, we fade down quickly to something manageable. And then we get the softer beam. So we still get that blowout. And since we're getting the blowout and the different bit of geometry that was also blowing out, it's hiding the transition between those different things. You could also make it slightly transparent if you wanted to. A lot of different ways of potentially hiding that in there. Yeah, and I mean, you could this is all based off. You totally saw it, or that's why I did it this way. Is all this is still based on the same spline, so we have an instance and another instance of the same spline. So if we wanted to get additional animation going, I could grab that tracer. Let's see if this works. I don't know that it will. You saw me dragging that line across, but we could make a trim. Search for the word trim. So here's a trim spline modifier made by Rocket Lasso for Maxon. I think that one is for everybody. But I should be able to grab that trim spline and start grabbing the end, and I could keyframe this in, and you see now I can just rewind that out, and it's actually going to fade that out as well. So yeah, just keyframe that in, fading it along. And as Demi was just saying, you could also be deforming this on multiple axes if you were so inclined. Um, honestly, can we deform it only on 2 axis? Maybe if I grab a, yeah, I mean, you could run the simulation on there if you want, drifting around with actual turbulence and whatnot, and you can also just do some simple deformation of the line. Again, on here, actually, I mean, silly, we've got another. Well, I guess not everybody has it, but if you got your Max on One subscription, you can search for My Electric Spline Modifier, drop that on. I love the electric spline modifier, and does the okay the electric spline modifier? I forget. This capsule doesn't. Oh, it's remapping. Let me turn off resample. There we go. Yeah, the resample was making it be different. Um, yeah, there we go. Cool. And what I was going to say is, yeah, we got this displacement, so we can be displacing. We can even ignore all that. We just have this line, and you can see that as I pull this, I'm displacing that line. I am displacing in all 3 dimensions, but we can say, hey, don't deform on Y. So now, 2-dimensionally, I've got this line. And if I hit play, you've got that going, it's animating along. I told it to fade out on the edges, or at least it is by default. So we can say, don't fade out. So now everything's wiggling. And now let's say, hey, calm down. Calm down there, buddy. You're going a little crazy. Oh, that's the frequency. We want the animation speed. 10%. Yeah, calm that down a little bit. It's FBM right now. We probably want something real smooth like Perlin noise, which is maybe more octaves. Yeah, something like that. So yeah, now you can see I'm able to twist it around really slowly, and we could reactivate all this. And now you see that we've got this line drifting around, fading, noise traveling up and down, like traveling, along. The original spline was something we made editable, but you just feed this in anything. This could be a text spline, and we could still be fading and combining all these different things. So even with this in Redshift, we should be getting kind of like ultimate control over every aspect of it. And it will render super fast because it's a single layer of opacity and not like a volumetric light that is trying to calculate. So, something to keep in mind is that you don't always have to go and make this super crazy advanced rig. Sometimes these old school techniques work really well. Like anything, like think about the way Disney used to have to do stuff, or think about the way video games have to do things pretty often, where it's like, it's like, well, they can't do real time. Well, I guess a lot of them can now, but like volumetric rendering was something that you had to fake in the past. So it's like, oh, we can still do those fakes. So, that type of stuff can be like really fun and satisfying to find like these cool workarounds. Um, so yeah, and I mean, and there's a lot more we could do here. This could be multiple lines going up and then slightly transparent from each other. But yeah, I think that covers that one pretty well. I like that one. Very, like both with us doing the old physical renderer inverse volumetric and also this both feel like kind of fun old school techniques. Don't always have to overthink it. Yeah, I like it. We could place a floor. It's not really going to change anything. This is all essentially fake and it's perfectly flat. So if we make a plane, T for scale, make it bigger, I'll just make it super huge. And I'm just going to move it down ever so slightly just to make sure that they're not intersecting. And I mean, if we hit go, in theory, the subsurface scattering should be not subsurface scattering. The illumination should be slightly illuminating the floor. But what I think would look cool would be a kind of slightly reflective floor. So let's make the floor black and make it kind of shiny. Yeah, so you get that reflection on there. That's pretty cool. Might be even more fun if we really blew it out. Maybe I didn't move the floor down far enough because I feel like we're not seeing that base spline. Yeah, I don't think I quite did. Gotta be careful about how far we move it. Yeah, okay, the reflection is fun. Actually, yeah, a little bit of blur goes a long way on that. Shouldn't have gotten rid of all of. Do that. Yeah, look at that. That's cool. Makes me want to blow it out even more. Probably not a good idea, but easy enough to hit undo. 15 brightness. Yeah, make that super bright. Yeah, that still survives pretty well. Make that one brighter as well. I mean, yeah, you think of you do a whole animation of that, like, yeah, you frame it up all nice, have that line like go zoom, like traveling around the entire along the entire thing super quickly. If this was fade. I mean, even here you can see it rendering pretty quick because it's such a simple scene. So you see like that line just kind of coming to life as it drags along. I dig it, and it's all just based on this original spline. So always fun. Something. I mean, we should. Well, we keep doing kind of cool things on it, so I'm not complaining. Um, a technique I like doing is feeding my text spline into a connect, and then don't make instances of your original object. Make the instances of the connect. So if I grab both of those and put them in the connect, then now I'm free to add in additional splines or just swap out splines, and I don't ever have to relink anything. So let's make a text spline. Lie that flat on the ground. I'll type in rockets like so. And I should be able to just drop that inside the connect as well. And then you see the rig automatically got applied to it. Pretty cool. The electric spline modifier is smoothing it out right now, but I dig it. Although you want to make sure you're only feeding in an open or closed spline. Right now there's an open and closed, so it's closing the other one. Any questions? Oh yeah, definitely Tron vibes. And even here, this was a pre-built line, but this could be one that's drawing as it goes. We got the electric spline modifier. Everything here would follow through perfectly. So let's make a null and a tracer that's tracing the null. On the null, I'll right click and add a vibrate tag position 500, but not on Y, 0.1 for the speed. Hit play. So now we get this line, 0.3 for the speed. There we go. And we get this line drawn along. And now we just drop that inside of our connect. Turn off the tracer. Don't need that. Actually, I'll take the electric spline modifier and copy it onto the tracer. So now those, even as it draws a line, they'll stay alive. And now we get, kind of an infinite one drawing along, doing its thing. And we could even tell the tracer to, from end, only live for like 33 frames. So now we'll get this continuous line traveling along, moving, doing its thing. I guess the electric spline modifier, if you're going to have the spline erase out, you probably don't want the electric spline modifier because it's going to be moving the instances along. Or maybe that's the random noise. It could be the random noise or passing through the random noise in a way that's making it twitch. But it's probably the electric spline. Yeah, so we turn that off, and we'd have to be deforming it in a slightly different way. If you're making the trail not work that way. But yeah, so that would be traveling along doing its thing. Have it live for a few extra frames. And we could even feed the spline in to do its own spline mapping on that. Which let's do that. I'll save it as another one though. Inside the plane, we had the linear field and the random. I'll get rid of the linear field in this case. And now we drag in the tracer itself. Actually, well, you kind of want the connect. I'm going to drag in the tracer. So now the tracer is overriding it. And you see that the spline is set to a long. And so it's full power here and low power there. But that's fine. That's pretty much what we want. I can make a curve and say you are going to fade up and then you're going to fade down. And you probably want a pretty big spread there. And you can reshape this however you like. So yeah, now that's based on the spline itself. So now you can see it's fading up and then it'll eventually be fading itself out. Then we say back into the plane. And I'll just set the noise to multiply. Yeah, so now we get this little snake traveling around. So that looks pretty cool. And you just get this infinite line doing whatever you want at whatever speed it is, creating that same effect. Redshift, render view. Still doing its thing. Might as well set this one up for a very, very quick animation. That's fine, that's fine. All frames. Don't save. Redshift, advanced, 0.1. I mean, it's just kind of a glow, so I'll just set it to 1. It's like pretty much as quick as you can make it render. And go. Yeah, that's going pretty quick. 5 frames. We'll give it time to slow down a little bit, but cool. The electric swivel, it reminds you of the big swivel electric barriers at the end of Phantom Menace. Do you mean the gates that close as Darth Maul is dashing through in the power couplings room? But I didn't, but it would have been good to animate the noise that's drifting up as well. But that's fine. Flavio had been asking about. I think I might know what these are. I think you might have been asking about caster wheels. So let me click on that and see what we get. Yeah, caster wheels. I'll just pull up the image. Oh, okay. So yeah, here was a question, and they're asking about these caster wheels. And actually, the more specific question was simulate. Yes, can we simulate casters rotating like in real life? If you were to rotate the base around, yeah, we can try and build that rig. How much time we got? Yeah, we got about 25 minutes left. That's almost the exact amount of time we'd need for that. Yeah, this will just keep rendering, but yeah, it looks pretty cool. Yeah, I'd probably make the line a little bit brighter near the front, have it fading out near the tail. That could just be via a different ramp. You could layer and layer and layer. It's always fun to think about how you might change these types of things. Maybe even have the line snake up really quick from the front because that one would be the hottest angle. You could even this deformation, you could even put like a spring. So like these could be shooting up and then springing as they get up there, which might be kind of cool. And yeah, I mean, well, just imagine the layers that we could put on top of this, because right now I'm tracing this on a null, but this could all be particles that we could do. Like imagine we have a single particle, or even the null. We have the null moving, but then we make a particle emitter, and that particle emitter would emit from different points along the existing spline, and then those would drift outward, and those ones drifting outward would be drifting 2-dimensionally, so they wouldn't be allowed to move up or down. And those could be like secondary cracks moving off of the first one, and you could kind of put in a duplicate of the same rig, and that one would glow, but the lines would go up a lot less, and they'd fade away a little bit quicker. And this is just raw material that we could layer like a lot of things on top of it. I'll let that keep checking along when you take a peek, as long as it's not slowing us down too much. New file. I mean, when it comes to the caster wheel, honestly, I feel like this is a pretty literal simulation. So let's try and make it kind of real world. So here's our figure, T for scale. This will be our rolling cabinet. And let's make a wheel for ourselves. Purely eyeballing all this. Shrink that down. A couple extra segments. Don't need those. Okay. So, and then the last piece of geometry we need for our caster wheel, which is really important, that is a flat piece up on the top, essentially, that it can pivot. It's a good thing. I think I would have enjoyed being an engineer, like as a different background, because I like the way, thinking about the way things actually work. So essentially, I think a caster, I'm not sure if the caster pivots exactly from the center. It honestly might be slightly offset. Doesn't really matter. Make this editable just so we can add a visual to it. UBMF apply to get that subdivision there. I'll add several. I could have pre-subdivided, but I didn't. I'm going to do a loop selection along one axis, deselect from a different one. Now that gave me the left side and the right side at the same time. Extrude that. And now I can hit, make a selection of those 2 polygons, D for extrude, pull those down, pull that back. I mean, I'm not sure. Like I said, we're just kind of winging it. Oh yeah, is that true? If I move this over, so that becomes that. Yeah, they made it, I forgot that this was a thing, but if you hold down control, it's kind of like an extrude. I can just pull these down holding down control. So just like you can copy an object, I could copy those down. So yeah, that was just me quickly modeling up a caster. You imagine that the pivot would pass right through there. I'm not going to bother with any geometry beyond that, but you kind of see the geometry of what a caster wheel might kind of look like. We'll just save it before we do any simulation. Okay, now we need a bunch of stuff to be simulation. So the box, the cylinder, and the cabinet all need to be rigid bodies. Simulation, rigid body. The ground becomes a simulation collider. And now we need to start using our connectors. We need a angular connector. And what we need to do is if you feed in 2 objects, it behaves exactly like an old school connector, which is what we need. So I need the wheel. Let's name these things wheel. I don't know what this is called, so I'll call it the pivot. And we'll call this the box. Okay, so our pivot is way too big. So I'm going to say display, shrink down, please. And I can just physically move this to wherever I want it to be, which in this case is actually going right into the wheel, zeroed out. And now that's pivoting from the correct spot. I'm not so sure about the way the hierarchy, actually, I might know that we do need the hierarchy. Well, again, we need the connector to live outside of the rig, which is a pain. I hope they change that. So in theory, this wheel is now connected as a rotation thing to this little axis or this caster. If I have play, the hope will be this falls to the ground and then our caster will tip one way or the other and be able to kind of spin independently of the wheel. So hit save, hit play. Let's turn off the box. It flipped out. It jumped. It might have jumped because this pivot, the shape of it is probably being calculated automatically. And I'm going to say calculate the triangle mesh. So now, it's still interestingly jumped. We don't need the figure temporarily. It's kind of near the ground, kind of not. If I move the ground down, does it now just fall? It's still weird that we're getting that little hop. I mean, it's fine. It seems to be kind of working, but that was weird. Okay, and now, essentially, we need that pivot again, this connect. And I'll just rename this to wheel dash pivot. So I can copy and paste it, and then I'll name this one box dash pivot. So now it's going to connect, hitting R for rotate. I'm going to spin it upward, spin it downward. I don't know if that makes a difference. I don't think it does. And then physically, it doesn't really matter, but I'll move it up. So it kind of looks like it's pivoting from the correct spot there. And I'll say you are pivoting from the box to the pivot. So now all 3 of those things should be connected. And the pivot happens where the pivot happens. I think what I want to do is make that a child of the box. I'm not sure that will fully work, but let's just experiment, see what happens. So just as a first test, move this off to a corner. And let's see if everything feels like it's kind of connected. And if it flies off in a weird orientation. Save, play. It kind of squished down because it's pretty heavy, but looks correct. You see it spun around. The wheel's getting like really shoved off that axis. So several things. The box just visually is way heavier than the caster. So we could increase our substeps, or in this case, like this, I think this is kind of, it's going to be calculating as if this is a big solid box of wood. It's not like an empty cabinet. So it's really heavy. So I can just say your custom density. We could just give it a straight up custom mass, But I could also say, hey, this thinks it's 1/10 the weight that the volume would indicate. And that should squish down less, although still a lot. I'll try 0.01. Still sort of forcing the pivot through. But is that because the pivot's in the wrong spot? Does the pivot need to live with the object that will be pivoting? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. I'm gonna put that as a child of the wheel, reset the transform, and then pull it as a child of the pivot. I haven't played a lot with the hierarchy order stuff, but that's back in the correct spot. Let's see if that works. Okay, cool. Good. I might have made the box too light because I was fixing the wrong thing. So let's try putting it back to default and just see what happens. Okay, you see it jitters a lot, so it is still heavy. So I'll put it down to 0.1. A little bit of jitter, but okay, it's okay. Okay, cool. Now I don't know for sure, but even now at a glance, I'm pretty sure that a caster wheel needs to be offset a little bit. And I don't know if we offset over here. I think we do offset over here. So we'll offset in the direction of the wheel. And even geometry wise, you could probably, it's not like it's real here because we're kind of, all 3D is a fake, but we could do that, grow this one, delete MD for close hole, and then close that up. So yeah, now you see the geometry where it's kind of pivoting a little bit off there. Okay, so, I didn't physically put the geometry there, but like when you see the physical looking hinge here, you imagine like in real life, there'd be a pin through there, some sort of pivot, and this one, there'd be a pin through there. We didn't physically put them there, but they're there. So now if I hit play, that should be inclined to pivot from a certain orientation. So cool. Now that we've got that, unfortunately you can't put these in cloners, which just drives me absolutely crazy. But I'm gonna put this into a group so I don't have to move the null, and that will contain the pivot and the wheel. And now we'll make some duplicates, assuming it's working. Where? Oh, there. Copy paste. Coordinates on Z. Mirrored. And grab both of them. Copy paste. And mirrored. Cool. So now we got 4 of them, and all this because of the copy and pasting the way it was done. Those should all be properly connected where those are indeed caster wheels. Hit play. they they all pop off, so clearly not automatically connected. Pivot to wheel. Oh, yeah, it's my bad. Delete. The box pivot is actually living inside the box. Can I move that into the wheel, and does it still work? Seemingly yes. Okay, so caster, save, copy, paste, coordinate, delete, and select both, copy, paste, invert again on X. So now they're back there. The part that's connecting to the box was copied with them this time. So now if I hit play, boop. Okay, so now we've got this thing on, like on the ground. So we got 2 different ways of testing it. We can test it both ways. So I'll hit save. The first one is as if we were physically pushing this around. So to simulate that, I will, how do I want to do this? I'll make a null, select all the caster wheels. And the reason I made this null is because now I can hold down control as I click on the expansion, and it'll actually expand the entire hierarchy, because now I can grab all of my simulation objects and say forces include none. So now those won't see anything. Collapse that back down. So now I'll make a turbulence, forces, turbulence. And in theory, this turbulence is only applying to the box. We got to be careful because if we make it too strong, it's going to lift it up into the air. But let's just see what happens. Give it a decent amount of scale. So if I hit play, I don't know if we'll see anything. Okay, good so far. Oh, look, it's working perfectly. Ah, I'm so happy. Okay, I'm going to trap it inside. Let's see, what's the quickest way to do it? I'll make a tube, set it to 4 rotation segments, rotate it 45 degrees, increase my radius, and make that a simulation collider based on the triangle mesh. Go ahead and bounce off of it. Zero friction, collide front and back, and hide. I just don't want it flying off the side. Save. Okay, hit play. So now we got wind, and the wind is blowing it one way or the other. But look at the caster wheels. As this gets pushed along, the direction it's pushing, because of that offset, is making the wheels spin in the orientation that the object is moving. So yeah, pretty much working perfectly. And much like a real one, you saw that one wheel kind of was spinning all crazy. So that's kind of fun. I'm not sure what makes those types of wheels do that. I mean, if you're doing, well, I mean, you can go further and further and further. If we shifted the casters further, it's going to be more inclined to spin one way or the other. The wheels would typically be kind of rounded, which is probably going to make them pivot better and potentially spin less. Yeah, I almost guarantee that would make them spin less, but I'm not super worried about that. Yeah, that was one method I wanted to do. And then the other method is turn off the turbulence, and now we'll make the floor animate. Hopefully it doesn't like fall through the floor, but we'll say rotation 0.25, 30, 30, I think. Bunk. So yeah, now the floor, there's no wind. Now it's just the floor is moving. I guess it's already tilting, so that's fine. And yeah, as it tilts, you can see that the wheels automatically want to tilt not in the direction that they're tilting, but tilt in the direction that the box is dictating that they need to go, because the box moves one way. They're resisting, so they flip to the opposite side, and the wheels, in theory, are spinning. It rotated far enough, it probably bumped into our invisible wall. Our invisible wall should probably be a hair smaller and taller. Bonk. Oh no, it's flipping. Let's scoot the floor down. I want it to land on its wheels. There we go. Good enough. Bunk. Whoa. Oh, and yeah, I just want to see if the wheels were spinning. Change the renderer. It's what I used to do. It's still what I do. So I'll just make an old material, go back to Redshift. In the channel here, just make a checkerboard. I don't think we have a checkerboard built in to Redshift. I really want a checkerboard. I use the checkerboard so often. Checkerboard one by one. That's fine. Yeah, look at them go. Spinning around all perfect like. Whoa! Earthquake. SSAO. Gotta have a little contact shadow. But yeah, quite pleased. Yeah, I think that's pretty much caster wheels working the way we want them to. Like I said, you can't put the stuff in cloners. Let's say that our tilt will be a little calmer. And then drop the box in here. Call it caster box. And copy paste. Paste. And we got 3 boxes. And now they can fight it out. Bunk, bunk. Roll, roll, roll. Yeah, the wheels are, I mean, if you follow the physics of the stuff, typically you're going to get the correct end result. Although, yeah, those are colliding with the wall. Not surprising. Yeah, any question? We're pretty much right at the end here. But yeah, a really good series of questions today. And I feel like we were able to properly, get some good ones. We didn't hit a lot of last week, or not last week, but when we did episode 5, that one was rough. Remember all the bugs we ran into with the fields? I just spent a bunch of time today reporting all those bugs to Maxon. So hopefully that's stuff that can get fixed. Remember the folders, the stuff was disappearing when we dropped them inside of folders. Um, let's do that and turn on turbulence. There we go. Bunk, bunk. Yeah, that wraps that one up. Let's see. The best episode this week. Agreed. Saved that one. Um, let's see. Yeah, fun one. Definitely more things that we could tinker with, like that fake line. Oh, the render's still going. Let's check out the render. Yeah, we just did all that simulation. It's so fun being able to do this on the laptop. Yeah, okay, well, we lost the frames over there, but that we can more confidently have that not only doing some redshift rendering, but do that rendering while running physics simulations. So having the streaming machine and the actual machine I'm working from being two different ones is very helpful for this whole live streaming business. But yeah, I think that line's looking pretty cool. And like I said, start layering up some cool particle stuff on top of that. You can push this concept really far. Like these colors could be shifting over time. You could even have like a color gradient that's changing the color. So as it's traveling along, the colors will be fading to different colors. Yeah, actually, let's just for the visual, I'm going to modify this one a little bit further. So like I said, I want we're remapping the shape as it comes in with this curve. Uh-oh. I pulled this out. That's why that's happening. I was like, why do the controls look so weird? Curve. Let's see, the front. Yeah, that's the front. So I'm going to make it peak really quick and then start fading it out. Let's say that, yeah, it's going to peak and then hang out, calm down a little bit. Yeah, kind of spike. Now we could make the entire thing taller. I'm fine with that. I just want the front to be tall. I just clicked somewhere I shouldn't have. Make them all taller, but still spikes up at the front. And then this is the color, which is good. It's fine. But we've got this ramp. If we make another, I guess we don't need a color composite. We need to override this color. So I'll make another ramp. That one will override the emission color. And get the render view going. So these are those colors. It's fading out near the back, seemingly. If I pull this up, does that get way darker? Oh, it's vertical. Ramp. Change it to be vertical. And then here's the front of it. So we can make that really bright. And then it will fade to kind of that teal color. And then as it fades out, maybe we go to a lighter blue. Yeah, so yeah, you can see I'm colorizing it one way, fading out to these other colors. The tail is slowly fading out as it goes. Maybe even pull that back more, pull it further, start making it darker. Yeah, so you get these colors fading, goes taller. Like I said, we grab this noise, give that a little bit of animation speed. I'm not gonna make those particles go shooting out, but like as this goes, oh, it's traveling backwards. I did the whole thing backwards. That's probably fine. I just grab the tracer and say reverse sequence, and that should just make everything update the way I want it to. Yeah. Yeah, so we get that bright spike at the beginning, very bright white, and then it fades to teal, fades to blue, fades to a darker blue as it's slowly sneaking its way down. And we get essentially apply that same gradient to the tail. I did not strictly necessary right now because it's just kind of blowing out, but yeah, you can apply it to both of them. So yeah, ultimate artistic control when you build a little rig like this. Like then I would consider this a very simple rig that we just via different controls. We can change the height, we can change the animation, we can change how much noise. You could do, with that linear field, we could do all sorts of fall offs. we've built a rig that's got like infinite controls for us to modify this in so many different ways. Very cool. Can you get a color change from top to bottom? No, you can totally do that. We just have to overlay the material. So we still got this ramp and the opacity is fading out. But if we make a second ramp, and I'll just temporarily swap it to this one, if we put that back to being horizontal, then we should see the mapping go from bottom to top. So you already kind of get this flicker effect. So let's invert that gradient. And yeah, so that, yeah, you definitely see it's bright on the bottom and you see it's turning into this kind of like this teal green flame at the top. So from there, I would just composite them on top of each other and merge them however I like. Now, maybe these two particular colors wouldn't merge amazingly, but we'll make the up and down the base, and then the blend will be the one that's traveling along the snake. Output those to be the final color. And these are already, yeah, those are multiplying each other, but I'll try overlay. So now you see, oh, hopefully, yeah, it's going to be a little hard to tell. But yeah, the front of the snake's going to be whiter, but the tip of them up here is going to be blue. If we made these colors different, we might see this a little bit more blatantly. Let's go nuts and just make it go into like a red territory, kind of the opposite. And then mostly dependent on these overlay modes. So if we add them on top of each other, subtract them, yeah, definitely different colors on top. So yeah, and you could make a mask. You have these fade in like any sort of way that you want. Right now I'm just scrolling through these different composite modes. Different ones are going to look different, but you know, they all look pretty cool. Overlay's a little strong for my taste there. But yeah, we'd combine, do a little color theory stuff, start combining those in proper ways. And we're just emitting the color based on there. But you could push it further and, put multiple ramps, mask between the ramps, have it fade out, have it multiply, have one that's just fading from the front to back. Hey, yeah, there's infinite ways of combining. I just don't have a vision for what I want it to be. So I'll leave that one there. All right, we are officially at 4:00 my time. I hope that everybody got what they wanted out of the episode. We didn't get to tackle all the questions. I thought I wasn't going to be here next week, but it turns out I will. So there'll be a regular episode next week. Let me switch over here. Yeah, there will be a regular episode next week. So everybody tune in. If I didn't get to your question, bring it back again next time. I just kind of randomly jump around and see what people are chatting about. And those are the ones I'm going to tend to gravitate to. French Fish saying, add that to Pyro. Yeah, I mean, that could all be emitting pyro flames, that's for sure, which would be crazy as well. Let's see. Oh, yeah, we still have all the old fire shaders and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, all the legacy stuff is still there, but they're slowly moving along. And it's always hard to depreciate things because I'm sure it's not unusual. Like every once in a while, you might have an old project you have to open. And if it's suddenly yelling at you that thing after thing after thing after thing is missing, then it would be like, that would be really frustrating. So there's a lot of stuff in cinema that we're not really using anymore, like the inverse volumetric light. Like it's still there. So yeah, what are you gonna do? Demi, yeah, I'm in Chicago. Oh yeah, there's midnight. Yeah, it's 4:00 in the afternoon. Possible. Let's see. Oh, Mr. Fresh was asking about the caster wheel thing, asking if it was possible to control the balance in case you want a bike with two wheels. I mean, think of all the difficulty a human has balancing themselves on a bike. I imagine that if you did get some proper not centrifugal, but centripetal force going on the wheels, that maybe you could get it like rolling down a hill. Because you ever watch videos where somebody can take a bike and roll it down a hill and it'll kind of drive itself down the hill? That's because the wheels are spinning and keeping it vertical. Essentially, the wheels are falling over and they're falling over up, and it just keeps it upright. Essentially, it's almost like a little, what do you call it? Like a flywheel, like a gyroscopic flywheel. So in theory, you could, but it'd be a very different type of rig. It wouldn't necessarily be any harder than the box, but it'd be like starting over on the box. JH saying you don't have Redshift, but have Octane. Does Octane have some of the same material applications? I'm assuming everything I did there was really, really straightforward. Those were just ramps or gradients. So if you just overlaid ramps and gradients, you'd be getting all the same effects. I'm sure they've got some sort of noises in there. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and hanging out. It was a great episode. Thank you for all the questions. I really appreciate it. We're going to be launching the beta for a new tool I haven't talked about yet at all, probably tomorrow. So if we can get the beta going pretty quickly, hopefully I'll be able to start showing that off sooner than later. And pretty soon the voxel mesher will be going into its next stage of beta. And of course, we're working on new tools for Maxon as well. So yeah, things are busy, lots going on, but that's going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks again to everybody on Twitch who subscribed. That is very much appreciated. And yeah, all the continued support is always appreciated too. So I'll wrap it up. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.